Just recently, former Vice President Joe Biden picked Kamala Harris to be his running mate in 2020. This pick sparked controversy, with some on the right calling her a diversity pick, while some on the left are saying she is far too moderate a candidate. For many voters who aren't familiar with her beyond her brief run for president, the question remains, who is Kamala Harris? Well, to start from the very beginning, Harris is the daughter of Indian and Jamaican immigrants. She began her career as a deputy district attorney in California before working her way up the food chain. In 2014, her prosecutorial campaign took a step up as she was elected the district attorney of San Francisco, an office now held by Chesa Boudin. As DA, she had a polarizing record to say the least. In 2008, Harris supported a San Francisco policy that required schools to report the arrests of undocumented minors to Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. This drew harsh criticisms, as the juveniles were turned over to ICE regardless of whether they were convicted of the original crime. Speaking in retrospect, Harris said that the policy was, quote, intended to protect the sanctuary status of San Francisco and to ensure local police, who needed to have strong relationships with the community they serve regardless of immigration status, were not forced to operate as immigration agents, which is the responsibility of the federal government, and that, looking back, this policy could have been applied more fairly. Another position she held as district attorney was one in opposition to the legalization of marijuana.
Your opponent, Ron Gold, has said that he is for the legalization of marijuana recreationally. Your thoughts on that?
That he is entitled to his opinion.
Her position has since changed on this issue, although, as you will see, the prosecution of nonviolent drug offenders is an issue that is rampant in her prosecutorial career. Despite this, not all of her actions as DA ran antithetically to her title of the quote-unquote progressive prosecutor. For example, she opposed the death penalty and even fought to at least marginally reduce the harshness of mandatory minimum sentencing. Now, this brings us to the peak of Harris's career as an elected prosecutor. In 2011, she was elected Attorney General of California, an office she held until 2017. Unfortunately, the controversies didn't stop here for Harris, and actually intensified in this role. One of the biggest critiques levied against her for her whole career is that she failed to give a fair trial to those she prosecuted, most notably Kevin Cooper and George Gage, the former of which is on death row. Cooper was convicted of 4 murders, which he vehemently denies. Despite credible claims by his defense supposedly proving his innocence, Kamala Harris refused the testing of DNA that could have released him from this death sentence. She has since apologized for the lack of action, but Cooper remains on death row to this day. The other man, George Gage, is currently serving a 70-year sentence for sexually abusing his stepdaughter. In this case, Harris's prosecutor withheld possible exculpatory evidence showing that the stepdaughter lied to the police. Later, in 2015, when called upon to support legislation mandating body cams be worn by all police officers and mandating that her office investigate police killings, Harris refused. And finally, in one of the most damning scandals of her career, Harris's office fought the 2011 Supreme Court ruling in Brown v. Plata, in which they ruled that overcrowding in California's prisons violated the Cruel and Unusual Punishment Amendment, and thus, in 2014, the state was ordered to allow nonviolent second-time offenders who have served half of their sentences to be eligible for parole. Lawyers from Harris's office argued that letting the potential parolees out of prison would hurt a source of cheap labor that the state relied on. Needless to say, the defense of modern American slavery drew criticisms from all sides of the political spectrum. This isn't to say that Kamala Harris didn't have any positives as Attorney General. She did manage to help secure billions of dollars in mortgage relief for homeowners in 2012. She also refused to defend Proposition 8, which was a ballot measure passed by California voters in 2008 that banned gay marriage. Moving forward, in 2017, Harris was elected the junior senator of California. Despite many questionable actions during her career as a prosecutor, her record trends far more progressively from this point forward. In fact, in the 116th Congress, Harris only voted against progressive leader Bernie Sanders 14 times, more than only 3 other senators. Let's take a look at some key votes and positions throughout this senatorial career and her presidential campaign. Firstly, she was one of the first Democrats to sign on to Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All bill, although this position later fluctuated throughout the Democratic presidential primary.
I intend to co-sponsor the Medicaid for All bill. And because it's just the right thing to do. I am proud to co-sponsor it. It is about saying that this is about a right not about a privilege for a few. You don't have to go through the process of going through an insurance company. Let's eliminate all of that.
Medicare for All would effectively eliminate private insurance. It would essentially phase out private insurance companies
As the main source, but there would still be
source.
supplemental. There'd still be access to supplemental.
Okay.
It was in the context of saying, let's get rid of all the bureaucracy. Let's get all of the ways.
Oh, not the insurance companies.
No, that's not what I meant. I support Medicare for all. It is my preferred
As a
policy.
principle, you mean, not Bernie Sanders' bill?
I support the bill.
Okay.
I support the bill.
Well, because the bill gets rid of private insurance for everything
It
that
doesn't get rid of supplemental insurance.
Right, for cosmetic surgery, but for all.
So it doesn't get rid of all insurance.
Who here would abolish their private health insurance in favor of a government-run plan? All right.
Do you believe that private insurance should be eliminated in this country?
No.
You don't?
No, I do not.
But you raised your hand last
night. But the question was, would you give up your private insurance for that option? And I said yes.
My plan will separate your health care from your employer, meaning your employer will no longer dictate the kind of health care you receive. Under my plan of Medicare for All, private insurance companies will be able to provide coverage if they play by our rules.
This flip-flopping on whether or not she supports Medicare for All has disaffected many progressive voters. However, she does to this day still remain a co-sponsor on Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All bill. She also signed on to a resolution recognizing the responsibility of Congress to pass a Green New Deal. She co-sponsored another bill which would ban assault weapons in the U.S. Other key votes include her opposition to the 2019 and 2021 military budget, her abstention from the vote on the 2020 military budget, her opposition to the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement, her support of the removal of U.S. armed forces from congressionally unauthorized hostilities in Iran and Yemen, and her vote against the sale of arms to Saudi Arabia. On the campaign trail, she has also advocated for ending private prisons and mandatory minimum sentencing, expanding the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, increasing infrastructure spending, allocating $100 billion for potential homeowners in communities historically affected by redlining, increasing the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour, giving tax credits to families making under $100,000 and individuals making under $50,000, ensuring several months of paid medical and family leave, increasing aid for college tuition, ending Citizens United, and exploring the elimination of the Electoral College. When taking a look at Kamala Harris's career, it's tough to really pin down exactly where she stands. As a prosecutor, her record is objectively rather dodgy and will definitely hurt her approval with more liberal Democrats. But as a senator, her record is one of the most progressive out of anyone, with exceptions for maybe Warren, Booker, Gillibrand, and Markey. For left-wing Democrats who are disaffected by the Biden campaign, this was the biggest concession you could have hoped for. For moderate Democrats, you got a candidate who isn't too interested in shaking the foundation of politics, like, say, a Bernie Sanders type. Overall, the pick is kind of a mixed bag. For those who are big believers in the sway that a good VP pick can have, you have to question why Biden would pick a candidate from a state like California that was undoubtedly already going to vote blue, as opposed to a state that looks to be a contest this time around, like Texas or Arizona. On the other hand, as much as identity politics frustrate many ideological voters, the prospect of having the first woman of color on a major political ticket is sure to excite many moderate voters. All in all, Kamala Harris is a pick that isn't likely to fracture the Democratic Party any more than it already is, but will do little to unite the warring factions under a party unity ticket. With all of that being said, if you enjoyed or learned something today, any support on this video would be greatly appreciated. If you have any suggestions for future videos, please leave them down in the comments. That's all we have for you guys today, and we'll see you in the next one.